Okay, my second try, because my voice is always going away. I'm having this problem. Uh, Jerusalem is very dusty. Prepare yourself if you're coming on Aliyah. Jerusalem is very dusty, and I have certain, probably it goes in my throat, and I have certain allergies. So sometimes I have to cough or, whatever. The topic is finding an apartment in Israel, and it's not that easy, as you can surely imagine, because first of all, it's complicated. It can be very expensive depending on what location you're looking for a place. And you also have to consider that salaries are lower than, for instance, in the United States. And costs of living are higher. And it's not New York-like, as I said, but it's also not cheap. And it's very expensive. Israel is a very expensive country, especially when it comes to groceries or certain bills, and when it comes to rent, paying rent. So my first recommendation is that you always, when you're looking for an apartment, that you always go to Hebrew websites. Don't look at Django or anything English, because the danger of ripping you off because you don't know the rules, you don't know regulations, you don't know Hebrew or not enough Hebrew. So many Israeli landlords, for them, you are just easy to rip off because you simply don't know. So always go to certain Hebrew websites where there are offers in Hebrew, because this is where Israelis are looking. Israelis are not looking at this English sites or something. If you are used to American standards or great American standards or something, there are actually Israeli landlords offering this, but always look at the apartment first, because sometimes they call it American standard. And as soon as you enter, you just feel like, running away as fast as you can. So always look at something in Hebrew. If it comes to Facebook groups where apartments are being offered in Tel Aviv or in Jerusalem or in different places, always look in Hebrew. If you are not capable of enough Hebrew, if you don't have the skills, ask someone who can help you. Because otherwise, if you only look in English, as I said, the danger of ripping you off and exploiting you is very high. So always in Hebrew, because this is where Israelis look, and this is where you get, like, I'm calling it normal offers, normal rental offers. Usually when you rent something, the contracts are time limited. Like, I have to renew my rental contract here for this apartment. I've been here for 9 years now. I just renewed it with my landlady a few days ago. So there are different time limits. Sometimes you renew your contract every year, every second year, every third year. And just a day, 2 days ago, I heard about someone who has a lease contract for 10 years. So it's always time limited. And many times, from renewal to renewal, the landlord may raise the rent. With me, it doesn't happen too much. It happened once. I have a very good landlady. I can't complain. And I'm actually, in this respect, I'm very lucky. So I have to renew my contract every year, meaning she gives me like a contract. There is a standard contract here in Israel. Make sure you are getting the regular standard contract and not some fishy things going on in the contract. So get the standard contract, get the standard edition. So the landlord is going to give it to you, and it mentions like all kinds of things you have to do, he has to do. And it lists what's in the apartment here in Israel. You usually, I'm not saying every time, but you always have a kitchen counter. You don't come into like an apartment where there is nothing. There's always a kitchen inside. And many times there's even a fridge inside. I have a fridge. My fridge doesn't belong to me. It belongs to my landlady. And there's also, when it comes to the bedroom, to the master bedroom at least, there's also a cupboard inside, a big cupboard, like going up to the ceiling most of the time. It really depends on the apartment, but many times you have, or I would say always, you have a kitchen counter. Sometimes you have a fridge, sometimes you have a stove, and a big cupboard in the master bedroom. It starts again. I hope not with the voice. Okay. When you find an apartment, it also depends on the landlord and everything. So you get the standard contract to sign. And in most cases, you need 1 or 2 witnesses to sign with you. Those witnesses, most of the time, have to be Israeli citizens, and they have to show their Teudat Zehut, they have to show their ID card. So they have to sign the contract in case you can't pay the rent or whatever, there are problems. So they have to pay the rent for you. So you need at least 1 or 2 witnesses, and those witnesses have to work. Some landlords don't want witnesses who have retired already. It depends on the landlord. And most of the time they want people working. And they don't want people retired. But you know what? Talk to your landlord, figure this out. And sometimes it can be. In most cases, you have to show the landlord your income, like a bank statement or a working contract or something. So you have to show this. Not all the time. I'm just preparing you that it could happen. So the landlord wants to see that you do have a certain kind of income, a regular income. And sometimes it can also happen that the landlord is asking your witnesses to show bank statements or how much they earn. They also have to prove their income. So what you also have to do, as far as I know, I have to do it, you have to give your landlord, when you have let's say you have a 1-year contract, you're signing a 1-year contract, so you give 12 checks to your landlord. They are already signed, and you put in the amount and the date. Like, let's say I gave my 12 checks to my landlady, and so I put on the date like the 1st of July, 1st of August, 1st of September, 1st of October. So every 1st of the month, she goes to the bank and she gets the money, she gets her rent. So usually you get 12 checks to your landlord. There are Israelis who do not have a bank account because they were thrown out. They are so deep in debts. And thus of course, they don't have checks. So you have to figure something out. You should not tell the landlord, for instance, that you cannot get hold of checks from your bank, because this raises suspicion that you have a problem with your bank and you're maybe in debt. So always, try to negotiate, and don't tell your landlord necessarily that you do not have a bank account or that your bank doesn't give you any checks because you are in overdraft or anything. So, try to find some excuses the landlord can believe. And many landlords don't want the checks. Maybe you can transfer the money, or you make a horaat keva, so in favor of your landlord, that the bank automatically transfers every month the rent to your landlord's account. So you can make arrangements, or maybe they can come in cash. I don't know anybody who pays his rent in cash. I have this, as I said, I gave checks to my landlady for the next 12 months. So she's going to go to a bank and get her rent. Other people I know, they transfer the money to the landlord's account. And you have to do this very much on time, because otherwise the landlord is going crazy. And it depends on the arrangements. Many times you don't need checks, but many times you do. And if you do, and your bank isn't really willing or anything because there is a problem, so try not to tell this to your landlord. Try to find an excuse, something else, so that you can transfer the money to his account. And this is all you need. This is all you need. As far as some landlords ask for insurance. Some landlords want a contract with a lawyer. But I haven't heard from so many Israelis that they had to go to a lawyer or something. Anglos sometimes tell me, lawyer, and you have to pay this and whatever. I wouldn't take such an apartment where I have all these regulations, strange sounding, and lawyer, and I have to pay an insurance and everything. It sounds to me like a ripoff. I just want something normal, and you need some patience sometimes to find something normal. But, don't get into all this bureaucracy or something. In the end, it's just an apartment, and try to find something normal. And something normal you find rather on Hebrew-speaking sites and not so much on English-speaking sites, because, in English, it's always people think you have money and they try to rip you off. That's reality here. It's also reality here, not only in the United States or somewhere else. So be a little careful and find someone who speaks Hebrew, and also who can tell you if this is a standard contract or if it's just a piece of ripoff or something, to get as much money out of you as possible. So always watch out, and always get someone involved who does know the country and who does know the language. Okay, thank you very much for listening, and good luck.